So I'm going to keep the introduction to this video extremely oversimplified and blunt and seemingly arrogant. And then I'll explain everything later on because I'm struggling to make this introduction overview because I keep feeling the need to like justify myself, and then I'll go off on tangents, and then it's like not an overview anymore. So firstly, we're going to talk about the accidents that I've had to my neck: car crash, whiplash, um, strained my left trap in the gym, and cracked it incorrectly, and then it was kind of crooked since, and dislocated my spine at the thoracic section um, within the car crash. And then we're going to talk about how bad it was and how much it affected me. Then we're going to talk about my experience with chiropractors and how they have their place, but they're not the whole picture, and we'll explain why. They're about a third of the equation, I reckon. I spent like $3,000 on chiropractors over the years, so it's fair for me to say my opinion about this because I have a lot of skin in that. The rehab and exercises that the exercises and stretches that they gave me. The stretching you can just strengthen through length, and the exercises they didn't use a shorter range pump. They don't understand the different ranges serve different purposes. They didn't remove the eccentric. The exercises they gave don't really do long range. They don't really like lean on the ligaments to develop the ligaments that hold your neck together for structure and strength, so that you stop falling back into the same weakness and misalignment issue. Um, then we're going to talk about the rehab that I encountered from ATG, which was my full fix, and how I sort of tweaked it. Because ATG people usually recommended previously neck extension isometrics, which were good for what they were. And then Enzema dropped a collaboration with ATG, and they used like all the directions of the neck, and it was a lot more in depth, but it still didn't make use of the concentric only range progression, which is just removing the eccentric and progressing range as you accumulate a pump, which helps you lean on the ligaments safely once the pump is there. And we'll explain all the rehab stuff at the end. If you find this video insightful, leave a like, subscribe, helps me out, and share this video with someone who you don't want to have an injured neck, because it's the rehab we'll get into. It scales so that it becomes strengthening as well. So it's not just rehab, well, it is, but it's just the ideal rehab and ideal strengthening as well.
Accidents that I've had that have contributed to me having such a bad neck. The first one was I strained my left trap in the gym when I was 17.
Doing standing dumbbell trap raises with like 20 kg, and I didn't warm up, and I was sort of ego lifting and kind of like yanking the weight a bit too much, and then it was just like I just felt this like pink, like bing out of the side. Like, you know how you sort of pull a rubber band back and sort of let it go? Like, it felt kind of like that. It was just like a little pink, little bing. And it hurt pretty acutely. It wasn't like a full tear or anything. It was just like kind of like a grade 1 sort of tear, I guess you could say. It was pretty painful. My friend there saw that I had done something to my neck, and she wondered what had happened. But yeah, so that was number 1. So the second accident I had was this car crash.
And kind of a gnarly one. Took a light pole out of the ground and wrote my car off.
It was like a day before graduating. I had just bought my first car, like $5,000 like down, and I was on the way to the gym, and me being a stupid teenager, was thinking. So I got to this red light, and I was like, "Oh my god, this beat drop's gonna hit when the light goes green, and I'm gonna like skirt around the corner, like all Mr. Cool." As a fucking idiot I was, and I ended up doing that, but because I was so like pent up on trying to hit the gas and take the corner, um, I didn't pay attention that it was a give way green and not a straight go green. And then there was this SUV that was coming on the oncoming, and it was kind of grey and afternoony. It didn't have lights on. No one had lights on. It was kind of in the shade, and I just didn't see it. And so I skirted out this corner, and then as I'm like midway through the turn, I lock eyes with this guy. We lock eyes. We both try to like swerve out the way, and but it was kind of too late. I was in an automatic, so I tried to like accelerate out the corner, and yeah, it just wasn't. It was too late. So I hit. So I was turning right. So I was coming this way, and then he was coming, and then we saw each other too late, and he hit my front left side, and then I spun almost like a 180. By the way, I was listening to this Dua Lipa song, and I shit you not, as as I'm in this car and I got whacked, I was doing the song was like did a full 180, and then bro, as she's singing that, I'm in this car fucking doing a 180, being spun across the intersection. Fucking hell, that was so bad. And then what happened? Yeah, so I hit this fucking light pole. My God. So I hit this light pole, take the and then my car gets wedged into the pole. Then the SUV that hit me sort of came up and hit my rear end, and so I'm sort of sandwiched between the pole and the car. That's probably the image that is right here. And yeah, that was, yeah, pretty traumatic. Police came, took my car out. Oh, they took my car out, and as they're taking my car out, there was this crowd that had sort of accumulated. I had the instinct to record this, but I just didn't. I was like, why would you record this? You know, why would you be proud of this? And then so I put my phone down. But as I put my phone down, they pulled my car out, and the whole pole, this fucking like intersection pole, just goes funk and makes this big noise, and the crowd's just like, oh. And yeah, one of my workmates was there walking past at the time too, and like I was fine. Like I didn't maybe I didn't notice anything. I think I still went to the gym. No, I didn't. I just ended up going home. So then what happened? Then at school the next day, and it's our last day of school, and we had like a breakfast brunch, and I was showing people how I crashed my car. Anyway, that afternoon we still had some classes, just like dicking around classes, not really doing anything. And I was laying on my desk, like on my shoulder, like on, and I went to go sit up. And as I went to go sit up, I shit you know, as I went to go sit up out of this chair, I was like locked forward, and I couldn't, like, it didn't hurt. It was a weird thing. So I like dislocated my spine for, it was just for, it wasn't for too long, but I went to go sit up, and I was just locked in place. I was sort of just like really, really hunched forward. It was like imagine like you're sitting upright like this, and then I was sort of like locked here, and I couldn't go up anymore. And that it was pretty scary because I tried to like force it. I was like, "Ugh," and it just wasn't. It wasn't painful, which was really weird. So it might have just been a slight dislocation from the whiplash of the crash, because I did sort of get hit on the front side, and yeah, that was hectic. And so then I biked home crying, and I saw a physio immediately. Later that on the way home, and he was like, I just walked in, and he was like, "Yeah, come back on this day." Uh, I was just careful with it, and it kind of like, I don't know what I did, but it kind of went back into place. But I remember like I couldn't really work afterwards because I was working as a dishie, and I had to pick up all these plates from like on the floor, like from the dishwasher that popped out. It was near the floor, and I had to lift this like 20 kilo thing up and do that like 100 times in a shift. And my back was just like just didn't feel right at all. I was just like, dude, my back is freaking me out. Like I can't. I had to quit my job, and so, well, my first job that I had, and yeah. Then what happened? Kind of was just like all right in the background. Like it wasn't really too. I noticed the kink that was there from the dislocation. It was always like on my thoracic spine. It always felt off. It always felt like it was out of place, and I had to crack that area. Oh yeah. So sorry. The third thing that happened to my neck was I was clicking it a whole bunch. I got really like proficient at it, and I was clicking it like five. Like it started off like once a day, just sort of click click, right? And then it was like twice a day, then 5 times a day, plus, and then almost like 10 times a day. And then I remember one day I clicked it so hard, not hard, or I got pretty aggressive with it because I was getting like pretty quick at it, and I clicked this side on the same side as I had the strain trap, and I felt immediately this pop out the side, and I could tell straight away it just wasn't, something was wrong, and then the pain was there, and then it was always there and didn't go away.
Whether it was a herniation or slight dislocation or a strained ligament, I don't know, but since then it was always crooked, like laterally.
So that's my warning if you want to crack your neck a whole bunch. And eventually, like, it was so bad that I used to have this apron over my neck, and the work I was doing was just absolutely brutal. It was like 84 hours a week. Like, I was working on a boat way out at sea, and I had 6 hours on to work, like constantly, and then 6 hours to eat, sleep, and get ready for the next shift. And it was just 6 hours on, 6 hours off, 6 hours on, 6 hours off for 24 hours continuously for 6 weeks, for a 2 day break, and then another 6 weeks. So you're out there for 3 months. And that work was 84 hours a week. Insane. Fucking insane. And so then what happened? I had this apron, and my neck got so bad that even just having an apron, I used to like, even gaming, like if I put a headset on, I'd have to adjust my neck so much because it was just so uncomfortable. I felt like I just like developed this like twitch from just like moving, just getting comfortable and sort of like untightening my trap. And I was pinching my traps a lot, and they were super tight and weak. They were just really weak. I had this apron on. It was so light, but it was on your neck like all the time. And eventually I had to get my own adjustable one where I just wrapped it around my torso instead, because it was just on my neck. It was killing me. It was just like right where the strain and the pop was. It was just like just digging in there, and it was just the most like soul taking pain, man. Oh, those were terrible times. That's kind of why I quit my fucking job, because I was just in so much pain physically. I was just like, I can't keep doing this because the work, you couldn't recover fully because it was always 6 hours off, 6 hours off, and then there's a slang term that I had in that job, which was just like everyone was like broken. It was just like common to be broken and really injured, and just because like the overuse, you're just constantly overusing everything. Shoulders, anyway, what happened? So I get off work, I go see some chiropractors, expensive chiropractors, man. And all they did was crack me, and I kid you not, this older guy just did rubs like this along my traps, just like these lightest little rubs. And obviously, I did keep going back all the time because it wasn't very effective. Um, Probably spent like 2 grand on that because oh my god. And then so that wasn't too effective. And then years kind of passed. It's still giving me issues, but not completely and debilitating. And then after that, like whole 1.5 year journey of me moving a bunch of different places, then it started getting worse, like terribly. How bad it got and how deeply it affected me, I couldn't lay in one spot for more than 10 minutes when trying to go to sleep, and I had to keep tossing and turning in order to just get enough pain alleviation for the chance to fall asleep. And often I wasn't really going to sleep until 8 a.m. the next morning when I was tired enough to just sleep through the pain. I also had the most throbbing headaches, like throbbing headaches. Because of how crooked and out of place my neck was, the blood couldn't pass through my neck properly. I felt this pressure build up in my neck and in my skull and head too. The pressure was so strong that it felt like a vein on the side of my skull was going to burst, and I could feel it with my finger, like how full and throbbing it was. And so that blood just struggled to get through my crooked and tight neck. Pause. Resume. I mostly experienced the headaches when standing up or even just sitting up, like from laying down. I believe it's because the change in blood pressure that occurs from when you go from laying flat and then standing, and there's an increase in circulation that happens with that throughout the body. One time I stood up, it was so bad. Like, I had the headache, but also my vision went black for like 30 seconds. And I'm sure we've all experienced our vision sort of going black sometimes when we stand up, like after laying down for a long while. But this one time I couldn't see anything, and so I sort of fell to the table in case because I was a bit afraid if I went unconscious that I would have fell and hit myself. So I rested on the table, but the headache pain just kept increasing. Like, it didn't, like, I thought it would sort of increase and then chill out and stop, but it just kept getting even more insane. And I was just like, holy hell, I might go unconscious. Like, I thought I was going to go out. I was just like, this is just insane. But that shit
all of that was alleviated and fixed fully from just strengthening through longer ranges of motion of the neck, which leans more on the ligaments of the neck that hold these joints of the neck together for adaptation and strength and pain reduction. And it also fixed my neck crookedness, which was pretty significant. It helped that to straighten out too, because you're addressing the tightnesses and imbalances between sides. And so getting those all longer and stronger helps the crookedness, the lateral scoliotic posture to come out as well. So that's really awesome. But I'll explain all of that, and we'll get into that later with the deeper explanations. Sorry, I got a bit ahead of myself. So my neck got terrible, and then I saw the chiropractor again, on another chiropractor, and then I started rehabbing myself. So I was booked in for like 15 appointments, and I had done 11 already, and then I wasn't noticing much improvement. It would alleviate the symptoms and issues I'd had. My neck would feel straighter, but whenever I'd like not see her for a week, my neck would sort of like go back into that crooked towards the side crookedness, and my symptoms would come back, like the headaches, and I think because of the lack of strength, just a lack of strength in these ligaments, that the sort of neck would sort of just like kind of fall out of place again. And so I keep getting this adjustment, but sort of like the root issue wasn't being fixed. I think the root issue was just they didn't know how to really emphasize the ligaments of the neck. And like they gave me strengthening exercises and stretches, but the strengthening exercises, I mean, I probably already said it before, they don't use a pump. They don't do it concentric only. They don't do it in the ideal order. That the angles, the exercises and strengthening exercises that they gave me don't really lean on the ligaments for development. Um, they stimulate them but don't really strengthen. Me stretches like the scaling stretch. I should show it right here, but you're better off strengthening through that longer range, because if you strengthen through that stretch position, you actually get stronger there as well, which is pretty cool. And the effects last longer as well, because you sort of own that range now. You're not sort of like renting it by stretching, because it doesn't cause as much structural, and there's no neurological, like, there's no nerve exertion in that range, and there's also no sort of like there might be some micro damage, but you're not really owning it with all the fibers that are there. And so that's what strength through length is, and it's a bit better. And they didn't progress the neck incrementally with different ranges, and it didn't do the ideal order. Anyway, probably repeating myself. So I didn't notice much improvement, to be honest. And it didn't really fix, like, if I took enough time off from the chiropractor, my symptoms came back. And so it wasn't a long-term fix, it was more a temporary thing. It has its place, but I don't think it's the whole picture. And then my chiropractor got pregnant, and then I couldn't keep seeing her, so I sort of like left to like figure out my neck rehab myself. And fortunately enough, at the time, Enzima and ATG had a collaboration and dropped their neck rehab program video, and I mucked around with that. I hurt myself because I did like all the directions. You want to sort of introduce a factor, maybe two at a time, rather than all the directions. So there's flexion, lateral, flexion, extension, lateral, and then rotation. I think the rotation like fucked me up. So I think the rotation is something to progress like later on, once you've mastered the ranges of flexion and lateral flexion. My experience, sort of similar to the spine. I don't know, but what else? So yeah, so eventually I just started messing around with the neck rehab, doing one direction at a time, introducing one direction at a time, using the principles, bringing a pump first, and then slowly leaning on the ligaments, because it really hurt to like lean back and like look back. Was like I couldn't look back. That hurt so much, and I couldn't look left fully. But now I have full access to my left side, so that's cool. And I can look up without pain, so that's pretty cool too. So that was looking up was a pain for like about 6 months, I can remember, to a year. And yeah, so
So I just messed around with the rehab, kept experimenting, getting good at it, and refining, removing what didn't work, what fucked me up, what worked well, and the joint angle, a very important thing, because you don't want to sort of do your rehab like vertical on your neck, because it's very stressful for the joint. So you kind of want to pick an angle that's like that would be the kind of the most aggressive angle for your neck if you were to like do it this way. So it's better to start lying down and do it on a less aggressive angle, and then increase, and then so that the angle in which you do the exercise, these and the sequence, the range progression matters. So the concentric only range progression. So start at one that's easy and comfortable, and feels alright on the joint, rather than something that's really stressful first. So yeah, so then I just refined the rehab, and then eventually what's presented in this video is what I do now, and I can't really see much better way to improve it. And this is my protocol, and I just like whack it out, and it's simple. And I hope you start to understand my sort of how I understand the body, and the fundamental principles and truths of the rehabs in different ranges, and the range progression in a concentric only way for the pump to get it really deep into these ligaments, and just understand my sort of craziness and what I'm really passionate about. So yeah, just I hope it works well for you. God bless. Okay, so just as a list of do not do's or don'ts to let you know about before you jump into this, I'll lay these out, and then I'm also going to add some nuances and details towards the end that will help you to emphasize the stimulus better. First one is going to be one of the most important don'ts of what not to do for the neck rehab is you have to make sure that you're getting a rigorous enough contraction. One of the biggest mistakes I've made that you can make is by going too light on the short to mid range vascular range. If you go too light, you will not have enough of a pump. You need like a sick pump, or just whatever pump you can tolerate. You need a significant amount of warmth and blood flow from that pump, which will help you get into the longer range. And if you do not get that pump or enough of a pump, when you lean on these ligaments in the longer range, you'll piss them off. And I've done that a good few times where I've just done my head as the weight and not any external weight. It has to be rigorous enough. So you have to make sure it's heavy enough that it brings you enough blood flow. Not too heavy, but just heavy enough so that you're getting a good pump from it. I started with a 1.5 kg milk bottle, and that was good. And then my muscle got conditioned to the weight, and then I had to buy a jerry can and increase the weight, like a plastic jerry can. The second don't is
I just want to make sure that you guys have timed your meal correctly, like had a meal beforehand, just wait 2 hours, because if you do the rehab fasted and you wake up fasted and you don't have a meal, you're going to be flat, the bloodstream is going to be flat, and you're not going to have a lot of energy, and your body's just not going to be able to produce as good of a pump. And the pump is very important for the rehab. You need to get the most effective and ideal pump possible, and also have some collagen beforehand, which can also just be found in red meat, so you could just have that.
The final don't is just don't get carried away in a session and progress the range of motion too quickly. I know the pump might feel good and you might feel like, yeah, I don't feel any pain. But once that pump wears off, later that night or the next day and the day after that, you are going to fucking feel it and regret your decision. So please take your time. The spinal column, these tendons and ligaments, they need time in these ranges. They can only progress so far. You can only stretch it so much. So as you expose it to a new range, it needs to develop at that new range and get stronger. And then once it's more developed at that longer range, you'll be able to increase the range even further once it's stronger at that range. This is how you apply concentric only to the neck. So for flexion, and you can do this across all sides, what I'm doing here is I'm contracting up, and as I get finished contracting, I take the weight off my head and I just let my head drop down. Now this allows me to cheat the eccentric, the more damaging motion. And what this does, this enables us to maximize the blood flow and pump. It might feel clunky to start, but as it becomes more second nature and you get better and better at it, it'll be more seamless. Also, we're going to apply this no eccentric concept throughout the entire range. So not just the short and mid range, but we're going to do it lighter with the longer range as well. Where we lean on the ligaments and stress the ligaments too. We can hit these ligaments more ideally and efficiently and effectively, because if we do eccentrics through the long range, we're shearing the ligaments more, using a more damaging motion upon them. And so these concentric squeezes not only will be less damaging, but they'll also push blood more deeply into those ranges. So that's going to be really great stimulus. We're just going to apply this to all directions, all sides of the neck. That's pretty much how you remove the eccentric for the neck. Please do not progress to full range reps in your first session. Very likely you will not have the strength and capability for it, and you will hurt yourself the next day, especially if your neck is injured. The way to progress longer ranges is incrementally over multiple sessions. The best bet is to just do one slight increment of long range, about 10-15 degrees. Then you stay at that range for about 3 sessions to develop the strength there for the ligaments and connective tissues and the cervical column and the discs. Allow them time to get adapted and stronger to that range before you bring them into a longer range, which would be more stressful. So be patient with it. Just incorporate some long range in after your mid and vascular range. You can't neglect the connective tissue range. Your connective tissues will need that to adapt and get better. Moving on to lateral flexion, there's sort of 2 ways you can try it. The first one was what I was doing originally, which is you sort of start in this sort of rounded forward in this more comfortable range, and then we're going to progress out as the pump accumulates. And then you can sort of tilt your head back even further to hit the further scaling. That's what I was doing, but I realized that what you can do instead of doing this thoracic extension stuff, which is cool and I'd recommend trying it out, you can instead just sort of rotate like a rotisserie chicken, rotate your axis and sort of hit each scaling like that. So you can start with the front and the shorter range and sort of go from the side and tilt over a bit more, and then sort of hit the back short range. And you could still keep the thoracic extension as you rotate. That's probably a good posture to emphasize. You will need a pillow under your head to keep it sort of in that neutral mid-range to stop it from dropping into long range. So you will need a pillow that will help you do that short to mid-range for the vascular pump, and then hit all the scalings with that and the things that pull on the neck from the sides, the lateral trap, and then remove the pillow, and then that'll be into your long range. Once we've gone through with the short range with each scaling, then we hit each scaling in a longer range. You only want to increase range once the pump is acquired at the previous increment, if that makes sense. You don't want to increase range when there's no pump. What you're looking for is a hot, warm, pulsating blood flow pump, and there should be heat to the area because that's what a pump brings. The pump will help you get into a longer range more comfortably. I can't say that enough, really. And get a good feel for the rush of blood and how significant of a difference it makes when getting into longer range. Notice here how I'm going to be turning away and contracting. This contraction sort of hits the levator scapula. I remember hearing Jordan Peterson complain to his wife about his neck, and he was complaining how it was stiff and tight. And his wife said, "Oh, that's your levator scapula." And he was like, "That seems stupid." And but the reason why it's tight is because it's weak and it's trying to protect itself, and so it gets all stiff and doesn't want to be exposed to these longer ranges because it can't put up with the amount of load that you're giving it for the duration that you're giving it and the range that you're giving it. The solution is to just strengthen through length, increase that tensile capacity and that muscle and tendon of that muscle, and get it stronger, and then it'll be able to hold your head longer with a lot less pain. And the stronger you get it, the less pain. Here we're starting to get to the long range for this lateral flexion side of the neck. So notice how I'm going in the more comfortable range first, and then I should extend back. Notice also with the elevation how it's sort of similar to a 45-degree back extension. How the torso is sort of elevated diagonally and we're hitting the neck.
This is what we've been doing for the front, and I think it works for the back too. I don't really do the back in rotation yet. I just thought that was kind of cool, because what we're doing for the neck is essentially the same approach for the spine from low back ability, but it's just different muscles. Yeah, but it's the joints of the cervical spine are the same as the rest of the spine. So it's the same type of joints, it's just different muscles. We are literally taking almost the exact same approach that I have for this spine that I learned from Brendan and his program, and we're just applying it to the neck. We just stabilize with something. For the spine, it's the erectors. We stabilize and bring a pump to that. By stabilize, I mean bringing a pump to a vascular tissue of the spine, and that helps. The blood flow and warmth will help the other directions. When you lean on them and stress them, feel a lot more comfortable. And it just helps you get into longer ranges too.
A guide for you to figure out which order of the directions of the neck is ideal for you to progress for your individual neck issue. Out of the 6 directions of the neck, there's flexion, extension, lateral flexion left, lateral flexion right, and then rotation left, rotation right. Identify which direction or side of the neck is causing the most pain and which sides and directions are the most comfortable. Start with the direction that is most comfortable for you. Do the concentric only range progression on that side first to a range that you can tolerate on the side that is most comfortable. The pump that you gain, the deep pump that you gain from that, will stabilize the neck and make the more uncomfortable and painful directions more comfortable and tolerable. This is what I've done for my neck. This lateral flexion hurt the most, but if I was able to get a pump on the flexion progression, then I was more able. For me, my issue was on the sides, and hitting the sides first was really unpleasant and achy and painful, and just felt like I was yanking on the joints, to be honest. But flexion was really comfortable for me to do first, so I did the concentric only range progression on the flexor muscles first of the neck, and that helped really stabilize the neck. And the pump and blood flow and heat that comes from a pump really allowed me to then hit the sides right after, made them feel significantly way more tolerable and not as painful at all. So the blood flow and the pump stabilizes the neck and makes stressing the neck in general, since the pump is in that area in general, makes tolerating the more uncomfortable sides a lot easier due to the warmth and blood flow. So that would be my guide for you guys, is to identify which directions of the neck is most painful, which directions of the neck are most comfortable, and start with the most comfortable ones first, and then use the pump from those more comfortable sides to help you get into the more uncomfortable and painful sides or directions.
But the ideal order that I reckon that would be applicable to the most amount of people would be, I'd recommend flexion first. Now the reason I picked flexion first is because I think most of us are pretty comfortable with looking forward at our phones or looking forward. So I feel like most of us are pretty used to looking down at our phones and forward. And so I feel like that's a comfortable direction for most people to start, to progress the range on and bring a pump there deeply. And then I think easiest after that would be sides, and because you're already laying down. And then once you sort of bring that pump into that levator scapula, and then I think then it would be really good and primed to hit extension. If not, you could do flexion, then extension, and then sides. But I think rotation is something to be progressed very last, I believe, because it is a more complicated movement, and it's the same. We're taking the same kind of approach as the spine. And I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe flexion is maybe rotation is the only direction that actually works for you. But I think that's super rare, so don't ego trip and hurt yourself. I believe that you should have the basics of flexion, extension, and lateral flexion down first before doing more complicated stuff like rotational stuff. But this is just my offering and what I reckon would be effective for most people. I think starting with flexion first rather than extension would be best, I reckon. One very important mistake not to make is that this doesn't mean you have to do all the directions in one session. Like, I don't even do that. I just do flexion and then lateral flexions. And that was a mistake I made when training with ATG. Like, I was doing everything and I was doing too much. So your job is to figure out where you lie along the scale of how many neck directions you're able to do at the moment. Ideally, probably start with 2 so that you can get the pump from the easier one and then hit the more difficult direction for you. And then once those 2 get stronger, then you can add in another direction. And then once those get stronger, then you can add in another direction, if that makes sense. Yeah, but try hit things sort of evenly. So I'd recommend hitting the sides together, and then all the other motions should be fine to not hit as a pair. So don't stress too much about that. I think flexion and extension are okay to progress separately. Ideally, for structural balance, you'd want to hit them together. So if you can, then do that. But if you can't, it's okay too.
But I think for sure you'd want to hit the rotations evenly though. For me, I only progress neck flexion and then the sides, and that is plenty for me to be out of pain for a significant amount of time. And all I can do is progress strength on those sides, and because that's the damaged side, and so I just need to progress strength on that. But it is ideal to progress strength in all directions, and I believe that rotation is something that you would want to progress last. I think it's a more complicated movement, and I think flexion, extension, and side to side are more simpler movements to develop, and I think you have to have those down first. I believe you have to have those down first before you start doing rotational stuff, because it's the same approach for the spine. It's the same thing I've learned from studying and fixing the spine from Brendan. I don't progress my neck fully, ideally, because I'm still dealing with leg issues, and it's hard for me to toss and turn and get into those neck positions that stress the directions I'm lacking, and it hurts my legs too much. So whilst I fix my more fundamental, severe issue, I'm sort of putting to the side all these other issues. But the rehab works. You can progress strength over time and get out of pain. And it's worked for me, and I hope you find a way for it to work too.
So recovery times. You will be weaker the next day. I don't think it's something you can microdose daily. Maybe, but I wouldn't. My opinion, I think wait the 4 sleeps. It takes about 4 sleeps to recover from this, from any long range tendon work, because the tendons and ligaments are a less vascular tissue, so they're going to take time to recover from the work that was done to them, whilst they develop and get better. So 4 sleeps and you're good to go again. That's my rule. Maybe you're a bit quicker, maybe not, but that's a good rule of thumb, is about 4 sleeps. You're pretty safe, which that equates to about once a week, or once or twice in some weeks. So do with that what you will. There is an idea to do light blood flow work, short range blood flow work on your rest days, but for the neck, in my opinion, you could, but I wouldn't, because I don't think it really hits or gets blood to the ligaments and tendon as well. And I think it's safer, especially if you're recovering from injury, it might be safer to just wait between sessions until you're fully healed. So that's recovery times. One really slept on nuance or filter that you want to apply whilst doing these rehab movements is, so you know how we explained removing the eccentric throughout the motion? Well, there's another portion you want to remove, which is the change in direction. This is like a drop catch movement, but on a smaller level. Now with drop catches, there's a change in direction in the exercise, and that requires more tension. And more tension, in theory, means more damage structurally. So if you remove that and spend that tissue tolerance towards the concentric pump accumulation rather than the more damaging motions, then you can get a more effective stimulus. And especially if you're really, really damaged and sensitive, then you can, get more out of your rehab session without it being too damaging. And so it's the same for like backwards walking. Rather than striking the ground, you want to like smoothly contract. And so how you would remove this, and I apply this to the spine as well, which I don't know if low back ability includes this in his spine rehab, but for me, it's been pretty potent and very effective. And so, how you remove it is you cheat the eccentric, and you sort of pause, and you might even like push or assist yourself up. Like if you're on the spine back extension, there's handles, and you can like push yourself past that drop catch direction. And for the neck, if you're on a pillow, you can almost like kind of bounce your head off the pillow. Same with like you'll cheat the eccentric or as much as you can, and then sort of bounce your head and then come back up and contract again. And that's sort of a way to remove the no the drop catch motion. It's the same for the split squat. If you're in the bottom of a split squat, like you can like sort of bounce out of the bottom position of a full knee bend, which is interesting. Interesting perspective to add to the rest of the body. And once you understand the nuance and sort of get it down, it's pretty potent. So that's been a slight intimation for me, being as damaged as I've been and sensitive. And yeah, it's pretty because I see a lot of damaged people sort of controlling the eccentric, and I don't know, maybe I just doesn't seem ideal to me. Doesn't make sense for the initial stages of rehab and like what you're first doing, that first phase. Just want to keep that all ideal as possible. So that's an important nuance to consider and apply, and as a filter or principle you can apply whilst you're moving your body and rehabbing it. Yeah. I like the mass of an object rather than having a dumbbell plate. I think why I like using water in a larger object rather than a smaller like plate, like a 2.5 kg plate or a 5 kg plate. They can work too, but I think something about the water, the instability and the mass of it's a bit more neurologically demanding. I like sort of the instability of it, even though I'm not really controlling it. It's just, I don't know, there's something about it that's more encouraging for blood flow. The instability encourages a more rigorous and unstable contraction. It doesn't have to be the water specifically. It can just be an object that has some size. Just something about the mass of it as well. But yeah, that's my intimation.
Take confidence in how badly damaged my neck was. If you have herniated your neck, these principles that I am applying to the neck are the exact same principles I am applying to the spine, and it caused me to fix my own spine issues. I learned these principles from Low Back Abilities program, and the Low Back Ability program works and is proven to work, and there's so many testimonials of people with herniated discs. And so this is something to have hope in and not something to shit on arrogantly and dismissively. It is something to bring hope to people who have no true answer or full fix to their problem. And that should be appreciated and respected and considered seriously regardless of what side you're on.